उपकार करे तो ये Namaskar. My first obeisance is to God Almighty, who has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha. My second obeisance is to the Mahatma, the great soul, whose life enlightens us all from inside out, whose faith and endeavor can be a role model in all times and in all ages. My third obeisance is to the Lokatma, to all of you who have joined me in this Gandhi Katha, whose eyes give me strength. Welcome to the Gandhi Katha, story of Mahatma Gandhi, narrated by me during the commemoration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi, his wife. Kasturba Gandhi's contribution in making Mohan into the Mahatma, inspiring thousands of women to fight against injustice and racial discrimination in South Africa, her own sacrifice and suffering during the freedom struggle in India is extraordinary. I pay my humble obeisance to the Matru Shakti, to all the women who comprise 50% of the world's population. I express my deep gratitude to Ambassador of India, Shri Mahendra Singh Kanyalji, and Dr. Sharat Kumar, Director, Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center at Paramaribo, for hosting Gandhi Katha amidst these challenging times of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. To learn from Gandhiji's spiritual life, his life in the ashram, his work with the indentured labor, his practices of health and wellness, of body, mind, and spirit, for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during and after the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the entire humanity. Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient oral tradition of Katha, in which there is narration, bhajans, and dhuns. Today's Gandhi Katha has technical support and presentation by Ravi Chopra. The singing of bhajans and dhuns are by Srimati Swati Bhagat and Sri Deepak Kalra. And the Gandhi Katha dhuns have been composed by late Sri Narayan Desai ji, my mentor, and I'm very grateful to all of them. Gandhiji used to begin and end his day with prayers. These prayers were from all the religions of the world, Sarva Dharma Prarthana. Gandhiji said that ultimately all the religions in the world point to the same truth of compassion, love, and forgiveness, and that everyone must study the essence of all the religions in an attitude of perfect reverence, and must have friendship and respect for all the practitioners of different religions and diverse cultures. All of Gandhiji's friends were from different religions and cultural background from around the world. One of his legacies to the world is nonviolent conflict resolution through interfaith dialogues for bringing about peace, harmony, and brotherhood. I will begin Gandhi Katha with the Sanskrit mantra from the Taittiriya Upanishad, which says, "May God protect us all. May God nourish us all. May we work together with energy and vigor. May our study be enlightened and not give rise to hostility." Om.
सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै शांति शांति शांति.
This Shanti Mantra during these challenging times of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is for the well-being and safety of everyone to live in harmony with Mother Nature. I convey my warm wishes to the people of Suriname and India who have joined me online today. We stand in solidarity with you all in our common fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. As I had said, that Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition. And this tradition of storytelling was continued by the Indian indentured labor, which used to console them. And they did it through singing, drumming, and storytelling in far off countries from their motherland. And of greater significance was the lasting friendship that developed among the Jahazis or the shipmates in all the island countries ruled by the British colonial rulers, where the Indian indentured labor were taken by them. So Gandhiji called himself a practical idealist. Whenever he heard, read, or saw something, and if he liked it, he immediately started practicing on it without waiting for anyone. The main thing that we must know about Gandhiji and to understand him is to see that the main thing for him is action. He had said, "An ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching." Gandhiji made a great significant contribution in South Africa through the non-violent resistance called Satyagraha, which had a great impact on the Indian indentured labor in Mauritius, in Fiji Islands, and in all the far off islands. Gandhiji's efforts to highlight the injustice against the Indian indentured labor to the Indian labor, to the Indian leaders, and forcing the British colonial leaders for ending the indentured system in 1917 is remarkable. And also Gandhiji's passion for serving the poorest of the poor throughout his life is something we all need to understand. Last year, I visited many countries and gave Gandhi Katha and talks. I have traveled to South Africa, Fiji Islands, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and Singapore. And I have interacted with the third, fourth, and fifth generations of descendants of Indian indentured labor in these countries. Recently, I gave online Gandhi Katha for the brothers and sisters from Guyana, Fiji, Trinidad, and Togo. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Many have been inspired by him to take up the cudgels against injustice through nonviolence. Others have followed his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his simple spiritual life. The new generation is eager to understand more about this greatest man of the last century who made such a huge impact on humanity. The greatest scientist of the last century, Albert Einstein, called Gandhiji the supreme practical leader of change. And listen to his own voice.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was, a, was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it through nonviolence throughout his life till the very last breath. Gandhiji's adherence to truth, nonviolence, and purity of means has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha so that people can put their hearts into understanding Gandhiji, get inspired to learn from his extraordinary ethical and moral leadership, his simplicity, spiritual life, revolutionary thoughts, his satyagraha, his actions, his lifelong service to humanity against all forms of injustice, and how he continues to inspire people in all the parts of the world, at all times, and in all ages. During the British Raj, while India was also ruled by them, many Indians were sent to other British colonies for work. After the abolition of slavery in the Dutch colony of Suriname, the Dutch government signed a treaty with the United Kingdom on the recruitment of contract workers. Indians began migrating to Suriname in 1873 from what was then British India as indentured labor, mostly from the modern day Indian states of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Bihar, and Tamil Nadu. However, among the immigrants, there were also laborers from other parts of South Asia, such as Afghanistan and Nepal. Indian indentureship lasted till the 1970s. This resulted in the development of a large Indian diaspora in the Caribbean, Natal in South Africa, Reunion, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Myanmar, Fiji, as well as the growth of Indo Caribbean, Indo African, Indo Fijian, Indo Malaysian, and Indo Singaporean populations. Gandhiji was born on 2nd October 1869 in a small whitewashed house in Porbandar on the coast of Kathiawar in western India. And his parents were Karamchand Gandhi and Putli Bai. He was small and dark, a very ordinary person, and looked no different from the millions of other children born in India. Yet, this was no ordinary child. He was to fight and overcome a great empire. And without taking arms, he set his country free. He was to be called the Mahatma, the great soul. Having led his people to freedom, he was to lay down his life for their sake. His first 18 years were spent in India. The seeds of spirituality were sown here. After studying law in London, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi went to South Africa as an immigrant lawyer in 1893 by the boat. There, he had come face to face with racial discrimination and injustice against the Asians. On 7th June 1893, exactly 127 years ago, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi, then a young man of 24, was thrown out of the first class compartment of a train in South Africa at Pietermaritzburg station because of racial discrimination. That day, a metamorphosis took place as individual barrister Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi transformed into a societal Gandhi Bhai. The seeds of Satyagraha were sown on that day and the Mahamanav was born. Gandhiji began Satyagraha in South Africa in 1907, 14 years after this incident, when he organized opposition to the Asiatic Registration Law, also known as the Black Act. Initially, Barrister Gandhi's circle of friends in South Africa were for the most part Indian traders and clerks. He soon came to take up the struggle for justice for indentured labor and said that his meeting with the South Indian indentured laborer Balasundaram was a moment of truth for him. As Gandhiji himself admitted, service of the poor had been my heart's desire, and it has always thrown me amongst the poor and enabled me to identify myself with them. Indian indentured labor were a model of simplicity, total abstinence of intoxicants, were God fearing and had a peaceful nature with frugal habits, but were facing unimaginable contempt and hatred and the worst form of slavery despite of being British subjects. Barrister M.K. Gandhi commented that Balasundaram's case brought him in touch with the indentured Indians and won him the hearts of the families of the indentured labor. He established the Natal Indian Congress, which attracted poorer Indians because of the trust that Gandhiji inspired among indentured Indians like Balasundaram. It was no less true that the masses of indentured labor inspired Mahatma Gandhi also with their courage and dignity as they participated wholeheartedly in all the satyagrahas and especially in the great march of the Indian indentured labor in 1913. Mahatma Gandhi's life and philosophy were influenced by his experience with the indentured Indians in South Africa. If Satyagraha has become an enduring movement for all people, the children of indentured Indians everywhere have every right to feel pride. So Gandhiji's role in abolishing the system is very, very critical. And he who really worked very hard to bring to light the plight of the Indian indentured labor in India. Dr. Gene Sharp, American political scientist and writer on nonviolent struggle, and the founder of the Albert Einstein Institution, drew ideas and inspiration from the thinking and life of Mahatma Gandhi. He said, and I quote, Gandhi also exhibited a remarkable sense of political strategy in his implementation of nonviolence on a mass scale. His approach to nonviolence was based on the moral principle of refusing to use violence against opponents. However, for Gandhiji, it was his spiritual life and philosophy and the way of life. I will play the Gandhi Katha dhun, which explains about Gandhiji's lifelong work in truth, non-violence, and satyagraha.
लागिरे लगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागिरे लगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सत्य अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन लागिरे लगन लागिरे लगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन
Gandhiji's non-violent movement or satyagraha inspired generations of people and world leaders like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Father Desmond Tutu, Father Kunz, Saint Teresa, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Caesar Chavez, George Bernard Shaw, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and many others who have resorted to non-violent, peaceful movement against injustice. Gandhiji used to remain positive and calm under all circumstances, and that was his main trait. He had faced many challenges in life, and I think as the world is reeling under the impact of the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic and everyone is affected, it is important to face it humbly with reverence to the virus, gratitude, and surrender to the divine forces which are beyond our control, fearlessly, intelligently, and with a positive outlook towards life. The more positive, the more calm we, the ordinary people, will remain, the sooner we'll be able to take this situation in an auspicious direction. For Gandhiji, this was his way of life. Mahatma Gandhi had said that the key to good health is prayer, meditation, Ramanama, nature cure, nutritious food, clean water, fresh air, physical and mental exercise, amongst other things. In short, during and after the pandemic, we need to invest heavily in preventive measures for self care and nurture the not sick. The lessons the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected, and soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this anubandha, this interconnectedness, that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family. We may be living anywhere in the world. We may be of any color, creed, or different religions. But whether we see it or not, we are one human family. We are brothers and sisters, irrevocably interconnected and interdependent, and living on the same planet, planet Earth, which is our only home, this Mother Earth. The current COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of existence of humans. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Mahatma Gandhi was in his faith in truth. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was to be nothing but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards and find inspiration through self introspection, self examination, and self purification. And that he did by constantly questioning himself and learning from his mistakes. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Mahatma Gandhi. He said, Truth is God, Satya hi Parameshwar hai. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of being truthful, of being good, and doing good to others. And the second realization was that in spite of all the upheavals in the history of humanity, humankind will only proceed on an auspicious path, auspicious direction, because truth, that is God, is only interested in the welfare of its creation. Gandhiji's endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone, and that is his main trait. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily. But because of this understanding of oneness, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect to everyone. He respected individuals as individuals without attaching any labels. And that was one more trait that we see in Gandhiji. I will tell a couple of more traits as we proceed in Gandhi Katha. Whoever hears them carefully, understands them clearly, and puts them into practice will benefit immensely. William James Will Durant, the American writer, historian, and philosopher, best known for writing the story of civilization, spoke some most inspirational words about the Mahatma. He said, and I quote, Not since Buddha has India so revered any man. Not since Saint Francis of Assisi has any life to history, known to history, been so marked by gentleness, disinterestedness, simplicity of soul, and forgiveness of enemies. We have the astonishing phenomenon of a revolution led by a saint. I will play the Gandhi Katha in Hindi, which explains Gandhiji's relentless quest for truth and non-violence.
आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल। ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल। सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल। उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध। आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल। ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल।
There are simultaneously three difficult situations that are happening now globally. The first is the pandemic of coronavirus, which is causing physical stress, sickness, deaths, anxiety, panic, and existential crisis. The second one is the financial crisis, which is also causing immense physical and mental anguish. And the third is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone and compounding the stress. We have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves by learning from the life of Mahatma Gandhi. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. What we eat, what we buy, what we do, and what we think impacts everybody. The current coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic is a wake up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. Mahatma Gandhi had said that key to good health is prayer, nature cure. And as I had said before, I would like to tell you that Gandhiji had started treating himself through nature cure from a very young age. That was when he was student, and he had started experimenting on dietetics as well. In 1904, in South Africa, after reading John Ruskin's book Unto This Last, Barrister Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi overnight transformed his life from a very successful barrister and a social activist and a political organizer to a life of simple community living, of self control, voluntary poverty, bread labor, for Sarvodaya, for welfare of all. He established 4 ashrams in his lifetime. And these ashrams were totally based on shrama, hard labor. 2 in South Africa called Phoenix Settlement in 1904 and Tolstoy Farm in 1910. And 2 ashrams in India called the Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad in Gujarat, which he established in 1917, and Sevagram Ashram, which he established in 1936, where Kasturba Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi lived in poverty like the common villagers of India, along with all the ashram inmates. Ashram life was his ideal of a face to face, non-violent society for welfare of all through constructive programs, which is his second gift to humanity, the first being Satyagraha. I am happy to inform you that I was born and brought up in his last ashram in Sevagram. My father was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood. He joined the non-violent freedom movement in India and lived in the ashram even after Gandhiji passed on in 1948 for more than 5 decades. Along with my parents, I have continued to walk on the path that Gandhiji has shown to humanity. Reginald Arthur Reynolds, the British writer, a Quaker, and an anti colonial activist, lived in Gandhiji's Sabarmati ashram from 1929 to 1931. Reynolds was impressed by Gandhiji's vitality, his vision, honesty, tactical and strategic abilities, his charm, his sense of humor, his logical and analytical mind, yet capable of real affection and the scorching passion for truth. One of the qualities that we see in Gandhiji was that he was totally transparent and open. Anyone could visit his ashram, of course, with a prior appointment, discuss with him, or argue with Gandhiji. In the Bapu Kuti, where Gandhiji used to sit with his back against the wooden plank, and hundreds of people used to come to meet him during the day, who would sit facing him. Now, many of these things I have heard from my father and from my own experience and my understanding. So, what I'm telling you is based on that. To save Gandhiji's time, the ashram management had put up a board above the wooden plank with 3 sentences in English. And they were: be quick, be brief. And the third one was rather difficult. As it said, be gone. People who could meet him for 2 minutes went back totally satisfied and said that in those 2 minutes, Gandhiji poured himself into their hearts. Gandhiji entered their hearts. Gandhiji was a great listener and could even hear the unspoken words of the adversaries. This was another trait of his. Another trait that we see in Gandhiji, that he used to treat all tasks as God given tasks and used to do every task with equal reverence. The children of the Sabarmati ashram found a true friend in Gandhiji, with whom they could go for a swim in the Sabarmati river, splash water on one another, play with him, go for walks, and during the festival occasions, Gandhiji would whisper in their ears whether they had kept any role for them in the play. He was, after all, their friend, a friend with whom they could quarrel without any qualms. Because it's, after all, only a friend who would stand by you and support you under all the circumstances. In the Sevagram ashram, as the children grew up and became adolescents, Gandhiji changed. He became a strict taskmaster. Every task had to be done with efficiency and sincerity, promptly, and everyone had to participate in all the community activities or common activities in the ashram. And these community activities were community prayer, community sanitation, community eating, and community spinning. Community sanitation and cleaning used to take place after the prayers for 45 minutes daily, and prayers used to be held at 4 a.m. and 7 p.m. at night. So, after that, in the morning, the sanitation and cleanliness activities for 45 minutes used to take place. Gandhiji, all the other inmates, and the youngest one in the ashram used to carry brooms, baskets, and spades to clean up the ashram premises, the surrounding, and especially the toilets. Ashram life was a life of strict routine from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. It was a simple life of shrama or labor, voluntary self control, punctuality, discipline, promptness, minimalistic living, living in harmony with nature, following the environmental credo of Gandhiji of minimum use of resources, recycling, reusing, reducing, and refusing, treating through nature cure, having simple vegetarian food which used to be grown by everybody in the agricultural fields, caring and sharing, walking and exercise, and being ever vigilant for serving the poorest of the poor. Gandhiji was able to continue with his hectic workload, perhaps because of his daily routine of walking 18 kilometers. During 1913 to 1948, he had walked around 79,000 kilometers, which is equivalent to walking around the earth twice. Time is the only non renewable resource that all of us have, and we must use time very carefully, like Gandhiji did. Therefore, he is the role model of punctuality, promptness, and discipline, which is also one of his traits. Another trait is that he used to be ever vigilant and had perfect control over his sleep. Gandhiji used to work for 18 hours a day, not for position, not for power, not for fame, not for wealth. He worked selflessly without any attachment or possession and did all the work in the spirit of yajna or sacrifice and lived according to the central messages of the Bhagavad Gita. So, if anyone wants to learn the art of living according to the Bhagavad Gita, Gandhiji is the role model. Gandhiji's unique practices of silence, prayers, fasting, and spinning gave him the internal strength. He carried out his experiments in health and wellness through nature cure, diet control, hydrotherapy, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day. The ashram inmates not only participated but modified and validated them and still continue to practice till this day, points to their relevance. So Gandhiji has given three gifts to humanity, and that is satyagraha, constructive activities, and Ekadasha Vrata or the 11 observances. These were a set of rules for the ashram inmates for leading a life of purity and training themselves as satyagrahis to lay their lives, sacrifice their lives in the freedom struggle. Ivan Illich, the Croatian Austrian philosopher, had come to Sevagram Ashram in 1978, and he sat in the Bapu Kuti, where Bapu used to live, and Gandhiji used to be called Bapu, father by the people of India. And he said, and I quote, "This hut of Mahatma Gandhi demonstrates to the world how the dignity of the common man can be brought up. It is also a symbol of happiness, which we can derive from practicing the principles of simplicity, service, and truthfulness." In the ashram prayers in the morning and evening, the first verse from the Ishopanishad, the shortest Upanishad, used to be recited. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatyan jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha ma grudha kasya svidhanam. That everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing belongs to us. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non-attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice to the extent that is necessary for you, and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the position of others. Nothing really belongs to you. Now, in the Gandhi Katha Dhun, this same sentiment is described in another way. Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies and service of humanity during catastrophes. Gandhiji dedicated his life to serving the entire humanity, which started by serving his father and mother in his childhood in India. In 1896, Barrister M.K. Gandhi took training in nursing in Cottage Hospital in South Africa and volunteered in taking care of patients. In 1897, he nursed and cared for a native leprosy patient who had come to him very desperately needing help. Gandhiji treated him and put him at home and later shifted him to a hospital. And Gandhiji continued the leprosy eradication, that is one part of his constructive activities in India as well. During the Second Anglo Boer War from 1899 to 1902 and in the Zulu uprising of 1906, he established the Natal Indian Ambulance Corps and along with 300 free Indians and 800 Girmitias, as the Indian indentured labor were called there, served as stretcher bearers and carried grievously wounded prisoners of war. In the bubonic plague outbreak in Johannesburg in 1904, he and Kasturba Gandhi not only rushed to help the Girmitias but quarantined them and treated them through nature cure. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi returned to India in 1915 in the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918. Gandhiji opened up his Sabarmati ashram as a quarantine center, treated and served patients through nature cure, gave them simple diet to boost, and maintained physical distancing. He looked after the mental and spiritual needs of the families of the patients through prayer and recitation of Ramanama, for being positive and taking care of each other during the time of the Spanish flu pandemic. Gandhiji had said on 10th November 1918 that our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them, even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint or of imposing a limit on our acts. Though Gandhiji's role and contribution to the political arena are well known, what is less known is his contribution towards health and well being. Not many people know that he wanted to become a doctor, and his inner calling, Swadharma, was to care for the sick and the poor. His interest in hygiene, health, nutrition, and diseases was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that adopting preventive measures for disease was better than treatment. He also said that it was important to focus on cleanliness, a controlled diet, and an exercise regime, and it was best to avoid overconsumption of medicines, especially those that were not required. These lessons are so relevant during the current coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic. Gandhiji practiced law for about 20 years and then he quit, but as long as he lived, he continued working to heal the sick. He was also a firm believer of nature cure and conducted experiments related to diet and fasting. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused diseases and then remove that very cause rather than falling ill and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. So, Mahatma Gandhi's message to the world on the vital question of health and well being is important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was His mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. In these times of coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, which has engulfed the entire world, and as all of us are reeling under its impact, it is time to learn from Gandhiji's life. Gandhiji had said that nature cure means taking advantage of what nature has given us. Cures may be brought about through sunbath, fresh air, mud and water therapy, and inclusion of fruits and leafy vegetables in the diet, and suitable exercise. And he insisted on treating himself through nature care and also treated others. Gandhiji was very interested in health and wellness of himself and remained ever vigilant about his own health as well of others. He said that our lifestyle should be such that it should not let any disease come anywhere near us, and every person is responsible for looking after his or her own body, mind, and spirit impeccably. So Gandhiji's advice was to have perfect understanding of our bodies and said that everyone must understand that it is made up of the five elements that are found in nature. And that is what has been told by our ancient seers and sages. And these five elements are air, water, fire, earth, and akash or space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements are essential. Gandhiji considered the outside world as but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There is not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide for conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb says, Yatha pinde tatha brahmande. You are the universe within the universe. As with the cell, so is the universe. What is going on within you is same as what is going on in the universe. Yoga and meditation integrates all components of health, and Gandhiji was a strong believer in Ashtanga Yoga, nature cure, Ayurveda. He treated 30,000 patients through nature cure. And as I said, Gandhiji had immense faith in prayer, meditation, Ramanama, nature cure, Swadeshi, Swachhata, Swavalamban, Seva, and Sarvodaya, and spoke out from his personal experience. The generation into which I happen to have been born, said Arnold Joseph Toynbee, has not only been Hitler's generation in the West and Stalin's in Russia, it has also been Gandhi's in India, and it can already be forecast with some confidence that Gandhi's effect on human history is going to be greater and more lasting than Stalin's or Hitler's. He was a British leading historian and philosopher of history. Gandhiji was not only experimenting on health but also wrote quite a lot on health and dietetics. In 1942, when Gandhiji was imprisoned in the Aga Khan Palace in jail in Pune while he was leading the Quit India movement, he wrote the book Key to Health, in which he said, anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or traditional health practitioners from day to day. Gandhiji was the first environmentalist, and with his stunning premonition and knowledge, he had declared that the earth is enough for man's need, but not for man's greed. Greed will be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis. He had predicted this almost a century ago and had also said The earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. So I will just conclude by saying that we'll have to learn to live with COVID 19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Mahatma Gandhi to make the necessary changes in thoughts, actions, and conduct for coping up physically, mentally, and spiritually. And this is the future that the coronavirus COVID 19 pandemic is pointing out to us if we observe carefully. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi comes across as the greatest healer and the wellness guru in these trying times of corona 19 pandemic, and that too for free. I will end today's Gandhi Katha with a shloka, Sanskrit shloka, a peace benediction for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let all be happy. Let all be healthy. Let all experience auspiciousness. Let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. I once again take this opportunity to thank SVCC, Embassy of India in Suriname, for hosting Gandhi Katha today. My special thanks are to all of you who have joined me online and have given me the most precious gift, the gift of your time. Gandhiji had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light. And now we will play the Gandhi Katha Dhun Shubha Mangalam.